Hi everyone, hope everyone is doing very well. One of my very beloved students wanted help with poets and pancakes. So this video especially is for you. We are going to here, I'm going to discuss section wise. I'm going to make some sections because it's a long story, and I'll be discussing poets and pancakes over the next few videos. All right. So Poets and Pancakes is by Asoka Mitran. In your NCRT textbook, you find that the date is given 1931, his date of year of birth, and he of course passed away in 2017 in Chennai. All right, he was a very prolific Tamil writer. Now, before you start reading any literature stories, you have to understand the time period of the author. So, time period 1931, pre independence, he is born. He lives through all these decades of when India got its independence, and his youth is when the country is just about developing, the black and white era of movies, that kind of a time period. All right. And from there, of course, he died in 2017. He also got the Sahitya Academy Award for Tamil writers. And in this particular story, the title itself, and a typical question is that justify the title. So, after discussing the entire story, of course, that will be more clear. But Poets and Pancakes, it is centered or it is revolving around film industry. Film industry in particular, there is a studio called Gemini Studio. In the Gemini Studio, Asoka Mitran worked as a writer from 1952 to 1966. In your NCRT book about the author, it's written that S.S. Vasan, he established this Gemini Studio in 1940. And Asoka Mitran worked there from 52 to 66. So then he wrote a book in which he talks about his experience of working in that studio. That book is called My Years with Boss. So the founder is of course called Boss by everyone. So his years of working there in the studio, he has written a memoir. All right. From there, we have this excerpt in our NCRT book. It's called Poets and Pancakes. So both these figures, that is poets and pancakes, extremely important part of the film studio. What I want you to do is imagine in your head the old time films. Like in Om Shanti Om, the Shah Rukh Khan movie also, there also he had, he had shown glimpses of the old setup of film studios. The actors and actresses used to have very heavy makeup, almost painted on their faces. And the foundation, these days girls would understand what we use as the very light creams like as foundation for being on screen, across the camera for the picture to come out very well. They used to have almost painted faces, painted with something called pancake. Now it is not used that much. Now, of course, the makeup techniques have changed, but pancake used to be a big thing. So all the studios would get truckloads of pancake. Poets here refers to the script writers, the writers. So what was life like in studio setups? His years of experience over there. It is intermingled with, of course, as always, all stories are with human characters. So the moment we have human characters, there are many shades to it. So what each character thinks and perceives, what is the author's perception, and what he sees in the other characters like Subbu and the office boy and himself and the lawyer, and then the MRA, and there is an English author who comes to speak with them, Stephen Spender. So his basically just, there is no beginning or end. It's an excerpt, it's a part of a bigger book. There is no moral journey here. There is just his observations, and through those observations, we get to then learn, or we can, have our own insight into this story. So I'll be able to do perhaps 2-3 pages today, and then we'll take it up forward. So this, of course, is about his years with the boss, poets and pancakes. There are certain phrases in the NCRT book. You have to infer the meaning as to how they are used in text. That means guess how they are, what they mean. So just browse through those, like catapulted, blew over. You maybe already know. Struck dumb, coat of mail, favorite haunt, played into their hands. So as we read, you're able to then infer the meaning of these phrases. Pancake was the brand name of the makeup material that Gemini Studios brought in truckloads. So the first sentence itself, truckloads in very large quantities. So Pancake, the base makeup material, the brand. Okay, so it used to be brought in very large numbers. Then there are these actresses' names, black and white era actresses, Greta Garbo must have used Pancake. Miss Gohar must have used it. Vaijanti Mala must have used it. But Rati Agnihotri may not have even heard of it. So down the decades, the pancake usage became obsolete. So slowly, these are names of the actresses over the years. It's given in your book, 1954, Greta Garbo, and of course Vaijanti Mala, etc. and all that. But now, as you come down in the years, the techniques change. So Rati Agnihotri must not have heard of it also. Makeup department of Gemini Studios was in the upstairs of a building that was believed to have been Robert Clive's stables. So you can go into a brief history of before independence. Robert Clive had his horses over there, and on top of that was this makeup department of Gemini Studios. A dozen other buildings in the city are said to have been the residence of Robert Clive. Dozen other buildings, about 12 buildings there. For his brief life and even briefer stay in Madras. Of course, when Robert Clive was in India, Chennai was Madras. So for that time period, Robert Clive seems to have done a lot of moving. Subtle humor. This entire piece, you can take it to be a satire. What is satire? If you remember, we have been... satire is like when you are using humor, sarcasm, irony to highlight flaws, to highlight some flaws in society. So that's a satire typical. Here you are not doing it directly. You're not criticizing Robert Clive for have moved so many times. You're just saying that the makeup department was on top of Robert Clive's tables, and Robert Clive seemed to have moved about a dozen houses in Chennai or Madras. He stayed in Madras for a little bit of time, but he moved so many residences that seems to have been a lot of moving. Besides fighting some impossible battles in remote corners of India and marrying a maiden St. Mary's Church in Fort St. George in Madras. So he seemed to have been very active, Robert Clive. So in that manner, slight, subtle humor has been used here. A short period of time, you're going out fighting battles, you're getting married, you're hopping houses. So that little bit of humor. Hope we're okay with it so far. Second paragraph, makeup room. Now, this is imagery. When I'm reading it, the mental picture of that makeup room, it had the look of a hair cutting salon. We've all been to the hairdresser, so hair cutting salon. Lights at all angles around half a dozen large mirrors. So आप अपने दिमाग में सोचिए जो hair cutting salon का look होता है. You have lights in various angles. You have about half a dozen, roughly about 6-7 mirrors, and there are lights all around them. All these incandescent lights. Write down the meaning of incandescent. Incandescent meaning that light which is emitting light due to heat. जो हीट की वजह से जब लाइट आती है दैट इज इनकैंडेसेंट सो वी हैव दिस इनकैंडेसेंट लाइट सो यू कैन इमेजिन द फायरी मिजरी ऑफ दोज सब्जेक्टेड टू मेकअप so you can imagine in your mind that the makeup room like a hair cutting salon, all right, so many mirrors, so many lights at various angles, and all these lights are heat produced because of heat. So obviously fiery means very hot over here. Misery means plight. So those people who are getting heavy makeup put in such an environment, which is because of heat, what miserable condition must have been. The makeup department was first headed by a Bengali who became too big for a studio and left. What does this mean? He was working in the makeup department and then he rose in rank and in his profile, and then he left the studio obviously. He was succeeded by a Maharashtrian who was assisted by a Dharwar Kannadiga, an Andhra, a Madras Indian Christian, an Anglo-Burmese, and the usual local Tamils. You should know some of these identities. What they are trying to show here is there was a great deal of national integration long before AIR, All India Radio, and Doordarshan began broadcasting programs on national integration. So the point here is life as we know it used to already be very much integrated. We used to, various communities. It was a done thing that they are working with each other. And then suddenly there was need to advertise it that we have a need for national integration. We must do this, we must do that, was on the radio, was on the television. But much before that, society, it was taken for, we used to be working together. So national integration practically was being sort of demonstrated here in studios like the Gemini studios. Okay, this gang of nationally integrated makeup men could turn, look at this line over here, any decent looking person into a hideous crimson hued monster with the help of truckloads of pancake and a number of other locally made potions and lotions. So another, satire. So another humor line is so humorous. You're a normal, ordinary, pleasant-looking person, and then the makeup studio is going to make you into a demon. All right. So once again, read the line. This gang of nationally integrated makeup men could turn any decent-looking person. कोई अच्छा भला दिखला इंसान है उसको they will turn into a hideous, horrible, very bad looking. Crimson is a dark red color. Hue is a shade. Crimson hued monster. So you put so much of makeup, so much of pancakes, so much of lotions and potions, and you become almost like a very, very terrible looking monster. But on camera, those pictures come out better. Alright, because of these pancakes and all the other lotions and potions. Those were the days of mainly indoor shooting, and only 5% of the film was shot outdoors. All right. I suppose the sets and studio lights needed the girls and boys to be made to look ugly in order to look presentable in the movie. Easy. A strict hierarchy was maintained in the makeup department. What is hierarchy? Hierarchy is a proper rank system or a system of order. From the lowest rank to the topmost rank, your duties and responsibilities are very sharply cut out. They don't overlap, right? So in this case, just number and learn. Chief makeup man made the chief actors and actresses ugly. The humor continues. Senior assistant, made the second hero ugly and the heroine. Junior assistant made comedian, and so forth. The players who played the crowd were the responsibility of the office boy. So जो mass makeup है, that is the responsibility of the office boy. Okay. In the bracket is given, even the makeup department of the Gemini studio had an office boy. So the studio was big, it seems. It was doing well. Even there in the makeup department, they had a kind of a runner boy or an office boy. On the days when there was a crowd shooting, you could see him mixing his paint in a giant vessel and slapping it on the crowd players. The idea was to close every pore on the surface of the face in the process of applying makeup. Excuse me, he wasn't exactly a boy. Boy is in single inverted commas because boy bol rahe hain, but he was of course in his early 40s, having entered the studios years ago in the hope of becoming a star actor or a top screenwriter, director, or a lyrics writer. He was a bit of a poet. So he had some ability to write, and he had joined the studio, of course, many, many years ago. And like this, there are so many people, struggling artists in the film industry today also, you find. They join to do something they're unable to, so they end up doing these other kind of small jobs. So he's just referred to as the office boy. He's not a boy. He's in his early 40s. He was not successful. He came aspiring to be maybe an actor or a screenwriter or a director or at least a lyrics writer. What is the songs, the lyrics of the songs, etc. and all that. Of course, he was a bit of a poet. He knew a little bit of poetry and all that. All right. So because it's becoming very long, I'll cut it here, and then next part, we will go on to the next chapter, paragraph. Sorry. Thank you.